Fear does not mean that you're not ready. It just means you're on the edge of something bigger, of growth. And if you've ever wanted to use your voice, step on a stage, or simply speak up and found yourself kind of shrinking in the moment, this episode is just what the doctor ordered. So if you have been waiting for permission to show up, to speak out, or to pivot your life, this is your sign. Let's get into it.
And I'm so happy that you said yes to being on the show. I feel like we're reconnecting after many years. But let's welcome Eduardo Placer to my show, Be Unmessablewith, the original Unmessablewith, OG.
Yes, and I'm wearing Fearless Orange, which you
There you
call
go.
orange the color of transformation.
That's right. I
And
made that up and believed it. I have the orange sign behind me for those of you that are
Of
listening
course.
and not watching. You know, we've got to be surrounded by orange. The orange Le Creuset cup. It's all about orange. There you go. I love it. I want one. Oh my God,
yes.
beautiful. So tell people about your journey because when we met, you were an actor.
Mhm.
Which, obviously I work with a lot of actors, so we had a lot in common.
Yeah.
But at the same time, you've now turned into this speaking coach that is really supporting people with, as I say, the number one fear for human beings, which is public speaking, which is shocking
Correct.
that it's higher than death, right?
Yeah.
People would rather be the one in the coffin than the one speaking at the funeral. That is
Correct.
frightening. Yes.
Correct. Yes.
So tell us about how you wound up doing this.
So, what happened really is that, for me growing up as a child, when I was in second grade at show and tell, I stood up in front of my classmates and I said something magical, like seals are mammals. They live in the water. They eat fish. Sometimes they're eaten by sharks. And nobody was interested. And then what I did is I told everyone that I named him after the boy that I had a crush on in second grade in Miami, Florida in 1986. And it didn't go well. And that was the first moment that I tasted terror in my mouth around public speaking. And what I desperately wanted to do more than anything in the world was be a stage actor as a child. And for Cuban immigrant parents, that was their worst nightmare. So the gay and musical theater, yay! And I think that what I realized later in hindsight is I think the reason why I wanted to be an actor was because I was putting on a show from the moment I woke up to the moment I went to sleep. And I had a lot of fear and shame about actually really being seen exactly as I am. So that's actually been my healing journey. And when I found myself in grad school and conservatory at UC San Diego, one of the top MFA acting programs in the US, all the actors teach public speaking to undergrads.
Interesting.
And I was like, that was a really interesting thing to get in front of college students and kind of come up with a curriculum over the course of 10 weeks. And what I realized in that exercise is two things. One, I believe we teach speaking as an intellectual exercise, not as a physical, spiritual, and emotional exercise. So oftentimes the reason why people have that discomfort and that fear and anxiety or excitement, whatever, there's this energy. They don't know how to manage that. So we get to build a bridge from the brain to the body. Actors, as you know, are embodied communicators. So we are primed as an instrument, to understand how to channel that energy so we can be most present and alive on stage. And then the second thing, which is something that's deepened in understanding my work, specifically at the intersection of working with a lot of women, people of color, LGBTQ folk, that I believe that we also teach leadership and speaking as a performance of a very narrow definition of power. And if we have people standing in leadership positions that look differently than what power has historically looked like, then we have to be open to it looking and sounding differently as well. So what if it's not about presentation, putting on a show, role play,
right,
but actually showing up exactly as you are, right? So inspired by Jocelyn, I made up a word.
So, you know it, the Unmessablewith school of language.
Of making it up.
Yes.
And as a Shakespearean trained actor, it's like he made up words all the time. So why be so precious with it?
All of words are made up. I hate to break it to everybody. There were no words back in the caveman days,
Correct. So the word that I invented was presensation.
I love it.
Not presentation. And presence is being grounded in our bodies, present in mind, leading from the heart, and speaking into the spirit of our shared humanity. And here we are. 10 years later. It's legal Zoom official since 2015.
Amazing.
I met you before, like as a pre-Spark. I hadn't fully pivoted. I was in the midst of the pivot, and meeting you and the work that we did together was transformative, and I think really setting up the pathway to step into this entrepreneurship journey.
Yeah, and the curriculum at that time, the curriculum for living at Landmark offers is really about living life powerfully and living a life
Yeah,
you love, and that's the tools you get, right?
yeah. And
Yeah.
what happened for me is I entered that work as a failed actor in my mind. So I was in a
Yes.
failure narrative. Now, I had been working for 15 years and been working in theater companies all over the US, but because I hadn't been on Broadway, I was like, I'm a failure. But what I
Everybody's got that
realized,
picture that if they don't hit that picture, it's like I'm a failure. Not that they
yeah,
failed, but that they're a failure. They collapse those
correct.
things.
And what was present to me is that I had created a story that I was a failure, at the root of which was because I was gay.
Mm.
And when I realized that I made that up and that I wasn't a failure, right? No one's experience of me was that Eduardo Placer is a failure. That was like, but I was creating from that, not creating powerfully from a present that I was creating from nothing. Then all of a sudden I could do whatever the hell I wanted, you know?
I love
And
it.
that liberation, I think, really set the pathway to really build an international coaching business that was international from the moment I said go, and really stepping into an expansive life where I get to show up with people who are poised to make the biggest difference and neutralize that fear, that shame, that anxiety, so they can show up powerfully to communicate the work that they do in the world.
And when you work with people, because almost everybody that I work with that also does speaking, they're
Mm-hmm.
afraid, they have, the jitters, they get distracted. I mean, they have all sorts of things that mess with them with regard to being able to go in front of people and speak. Different than leading a workshop, because that's a
Mm-hmm.
lot more interactive, right? So like you say,
Mm-hmm.
even the word presentation is sort of a little bit of a hook for
Right.
people, because it's like you're presenting something
Yeah,
and
yeah,
really
yeah.
it's like you're presenting yourself. But what messes with people the most in your experience of working with people? What's like the biggest thing?
Yeah. Well, I would say there's no such thing as private speaking. All speaking is public, right? So for some people, the panic for them is I'm one person in front of thousands or 20 or 500. For others, they could be great in front of a huge group, but a one-on-one conversation has them completely and totally fully fetal, right?
Mm,
Still public speaking. So I think there are two things. One, people don't know how to regulate their body. So they're having a physical experience.
yes.
So they tend to launch their speaking from a space of no preparation to launch, right? So they're not centered in their breath. They're speaking from their brain, right? There's a beautiful saying. It comes from the Asaro tribe of Papua New Guinea, which is knowledge is only rumor until it lives in the muscle. So they're speaking from their brain. They're not speaking from their heart and their body, right? So that's one big issue. And then the other thing is that I think they center what they want to say as opposed to what their audience needs to hear. You don't need to tell me everything. Really audience focused speaking. What's going to make the biggest difference?
Right.
And people, I have a bone to pick about story and storytelling, because people love to use the word story and storytelling and drop that word like a buzzword, like authenticity and
Yeah.
vulnerability and all those things,
Like
right?
transformation. I
Like
mean.
transformation, which is why I love about Unmessable With. It's just create a fucking word.
That's right,
Just
exactly.
name it.
And
Just
then
say it.
and then, live into it and be it. And people still
Yeah.
ask me, what does it mean? And I go, well, it doesn't mean being tough. It's about being able to fulfill on what you're creating. You say it and then you fulfill on. You create it and
Right.
fulfill on it, and not get hooked into that world of reaction. Like you say, speaking from your brain, but a particular part of your brain, which is that
Mm-hmm.
survival sort of
Mm-hmm.
fight, flight, flee
Correct.
mode, which people get into, not just with speaking, but, with everything.
Yeah. And back to story, that people think they're telling a story, but they're not telling a story. They're talking about themselves, they're timelining, or they're event dumping.
Mm,
And that is not a story. right? So that's why when we're listening to people and they're like blah 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 blah, as a listener, you're like, well, why are you talking? Like, what is this all about? You know? And I have a mother that's a verbal processor, which I get it. I'm also a verbal processor, but when we're in relationship to trying to communicate a message to an audience, that clarity of the arc of the story, I think, is invaluable so that an audience understands why you told me that story or why that story was offered in the first place.
Yeah, we used to call that a killer share.
Yeah. Yeah.
Which is
Yeah.
really, it has a beginning, middle, and end. It's vivid.
Correct.
It's got
Yeah.
moments in it, and it's like got a point. You know,
Correct.
like you could actually say at the end of it, my point is, you know, and
I
draw
would,
it all together.
and I would offer, like, if you're doing storytelling for like art's sake, maybe like The Moth or, you know, like a monologue or whatever, maybe you don't want to, for the sake of your art or whatever, you don't want to be like, here's the point.
Right.
But I think oftentimes for business or in your facilitation or when you're trying to communicate a clear message, I think telling people this is exactly, like, you're open to whatever interpretation you want, obviously, because you're a human being with agency and a brain. And this is why I told you the story.
Yeah.
Right.
And
I
sometimes
think
I'll
it's
tell
useful.
people before I even start,
I
I'll
love
say,
that.
here's my
Yeah.
intention out of our time together is
Yes.
that you be left with more freedom and fulfillment and whatever. So that way they know what to listen for.
Correct. 100%. And that is called good wayfaring.
Oh, really? Oh, I didn't know.
Yeah,
Okay.
that
I
is
have a
that is
whole...
wayfaring. Yes, that's
I'm
wayfaring.
a wayfarer. I feel like,
You're a
isn't that the place
wayfarer.
that you get furniture? Wayfarer, isn't that?
It is. It is. You get cheap furniture.
Okay.
Beautiful cheap furniture.
There you go.
Yeah, yeah. But I think going back to your point, it's like like any guide, like a storyteller really is a guide. So what you're doing is you're telling people this is where we're going to end up. Now, trust me, and I'm going to take you on the journey. Going back to this conversation that I said at the beginning before we recorded, which is about trust, right? Like how we build trust with our audience is like, I'm going to tell you what I'm going to do, then I'm going to do it, and now I'm going to tell you again that I told you what I was going to do and that I did it, right?
To remind
you.
Yeah.
Yeah, and then the audience is like, wow, I feel satisfied, you know? And again, if that is your intention, if your intention is to leave someone satisfied, they may agree with you, they may disagree with you, they may like you, they may not like you, that's irrelevant. But did you deliver on the intention and the message? They have agency to choose whatever they want. And, you know, you honored the integrity of your commitment to take them on a journey, and you delivered on that journey.
Yeah, which, you know, I would say you delivered on your word. You know, you create it and fulfill it, create it and fulfill it. And that really is the essence of Unmessable With, is being able to create with word, not because of reasons or justifications or the circumstances are perfect or anything like that. It's like, no, here's what I'm creating, and then taking the actions to fulfill on it, which I always think about you back when we met. When we had that interaction towards the end of the advanced course. You want to talk a little bit about that? I know you said you might want to mention that.
Yeah. And I want to see that there's a story that I want to tell you with, because I was thinking about you about this year was like defining Unmessable With moment.
Perfect.
And I think a seed was planted, Jocelyn, in that moment. So I
we'll hear both stories.
We'll hear both. Yes. So I had been I did the form in the advanced course. I was a very unhappy stage actor who was in this narrative of like, you know, woe is me. I want to build this public speaking coaching business, but I have to go to law school or I have to go to business school, or there's something missing that some external validator is going to give me to then help me create this new chapter in my life. And what I got in the work is that I'd made that completely up and ended up getting my dream acting job at the Oregon Shakespeare Festival, where I was a stage actor for 2 years. So after I completed the advanced course, there's the opportunity to register in the self-expression leadership program. And I had it, there was no way that I could do it because I was in Ashland, Oregon.
And it's a 3-month program and has weekly meetings. I mean, it's very, you know, not like just a weekend, you know?
It's not a weekend. And I'm in rehearsals. I'm in a theater company. You know, and again, I think as an actor, there's oftentimes a narrative of in the totem pole, you're at the bottom, you know, and you're at the mercy of artistic directors and producers and schedules and all this other stuff. And then you ask me a question, which is, are you willing to be unreasonable? And I was like, Yes. I love that question.
I
That's
know
such a
you were
great
like game on.
question.
You were
Game
very game
on.
on.
Yes. I
Yes.
was like, yes, yes, let's play. Let's play with being unreasonable. And you asked me a question, which was like, or you invited me to look at what was so. Like before I get crazy in like the fear, the it's not going to happen, all the stuff about the no, let's actually look at what's possible, right? And what emerged, being in Ashland, Oregon, was that there was a center in Seattle, Washington, and that I could fly uh, from Ashland, Oregon to Seattle, Washington to complete the program. And it met on Mondays, which was the day that was dark for the theater. So I could fly on Mondays. So the 12 sessions that are the weekly like hour and a half, 2.5, 2-3 hour sessions I could do on Mondays. The challenge were the Saturday full day ones. So when I looked at the schedule, I was in repertory. So I didn't have performances for the last 2 sessions. So it was possible that I could fly up those Saturdays. There was one day that I was slated in rehearsal, and it was the first week of rehearsals for the show. And I reached out to the theater company, and they gave me permission for those
Amazing.
3 days. So I flew 14 times from Ashland, Oregon to Seattle, Washington to complete the self-expression leadership program.
Amazing.
You know,
That is the
and
definition
now,
of functioning outside of the world of reason.
but now, like in the next month, I'm MC hosting conferences, right? I'm in Miami, Florida, emceeing a conference for social impact entrepreneurs. Then I fly to Tangier for a conference that I'm attending. So I'm emceeing one, then I'm attending one in Tangier, then I'm taking a week vacation in Spain. Then I have a client where I'm emceeing a conference in Sicily. So I'm flying to Sicily to MC a conference. And I'm going to take the first flight out because my partner and I have tickets to see Shakira in Boston.
I love it.
Right? So because I was in that practice about what it means to be unreasonable, then all of a sudden it's like, I can be on that first flight out. I'll sleep on the plane and I'll be with my partner and my sister in Boston and see Shakira after this amazing experience. Why not?
Yeah. Why not
Right?
is a good question actually to ask, because most people go the other way, like why it's
Right.
not possible, not why not.
Yeah. Yeah. And I think that exercise, that was the first exercise that I had. And again, when I built my business, so this was in 2012. In 2015, when I built my business and it was immediately global, I was like literally just following the seeds. I was a finalist for a Fulbright. I was going to go to India, Kenya, and South Africa and work at HIV and AIDS orphanages. I didn't get it. So then my dear friend who had done work with something called the Muslim Jewish Conference said, well, come to Berlin and work with the Muslim Jewish Conference. I was like, great. So I flew to Berlin. And then my first client, one of my first clients is a Kenyan national. She said, well, you didn't get the thing in Kenya, so come to Kenya. So I was like, I'm coming to Kenya. So then I flew down to Kenya. I got this amazing opportunity through a friend of mine from grad school working with LGBTQ plus activists in Eastern Africa, like literally on the Indian Ocean, like facilitated and working there. So that paid for it. Then went to visit this little community in rural Africa, in rural Kenya, where I had created the funding of schools for HIV and AIDS orphans. Then I flew back to the US and then I went to Bermuda to facilitate at this all men's retreat where half the men were gay and half the men were straight. The gay men thought they were on a gay retreat. The straight men didn't know they were going to be gay people. Then all of a sudden they're on a little boat together and they're like, what's happening? I'm confused. So all of that happened, I think, because I was willing to be unreasonable.
Yeah, and really be game on. That's what
Yeah.
I hear more than anything. It's like, come to Kenya, come to this place, come to that. It's not looking at why I shouldn't,
Right.
but the why not that you said, I think is also a bit of a theme I can hear in how you function.
Yeah. Yeah.
Like, why not?
Why not?
Yeah. I'm with you. Why not? I'm like, why not? And what now? Now what?
Yes. Yeah. Yeah.
So what's a time that you were really like, I always like to ask this of people who are on the show, like a situation that you were dealing with very difficult circumstances that could have taken you out of whatever game that was, but you were able to transcend it and emerge what we call unmessable with.
Yeah. So here we go. So in January, I was called to officiate a wedding up in the mountains of Colorado between Aspen and Vail. And my running joke with everyone at this wedding is that I'm a sea level gay. I am not a homosexual that thrives at altitude. The only bears that I'm interested in have beards, bellies,
I
and
thought you meant
biceps.
ABC. I was like,
No,
sea level?
correct.
Why
A
are
sea
you
level.
rating yourself C?
Yeah.
That's horrible.
Cuban.
Okay,
I'm
sea
Cuban.
level. Got it.
Cuban.
Yes.
Sea level. Don't do mountains, right? So I arrived in Colorado, and I arrived in Vail, and I texted everyone, and I said, "The sea level gay has landed. I will see you in a couple of hours," and rented a car. And Waze took me through a mountain pass that should have been closed, and I got stuck in the snow without food, without water, and without Wi-Fi for over 24 hours.
I mean, the food and water I could see, but Wi-Fi? No Wi-Fi for 24
No Wi-Fi.
hours?
Yeah,
That
totally.
would have been-
No connection, nothing. I had a
Wow.
book, but what was so interested is that I am resourced around fear. And there was a moment when I got stuck. First of all, I thought I was on the path that everybody was taking to the wedding. So I was just like, well, everyone's,
Somebody's
eventually
gonna
someone's
come
going to
by.
come.
Yeah.
Someone's going to come. And I knew that I had shelter in the car, and I had a full tank of gas. I was running the car. So it was like 75 degrees in the car. It was warm. I had my Canada Goose jacket. I was comfortable. But it was so easy. The fear fairies were so present. And what I was committed to was, there's one way that this is going to go. Right? And I found this mantra, talk about like moment to moment to moment, which was, in this moment, I am safe. In this moment, I am well. And in this moment, I am loved. So I read, I tried to get myself unstuck. That didn't work. I read some more. I waited. Then nighttime came. Then it started snowing. I was drinking snow to hydrate myself because there was no water. I didn't have any food. I wrote messages to my partner and to my loved ones. And I said, I am a pragmatist and I'm also an optimist, and if anything happens, I just want you to know how much I love you. And then I woke up at 7:00 in the morning and I thought to myself, civilized, I had a destination, so people were waiting for me.
Yeah.
And I knew that at some point they would start some search, but they didn't know what airport I had flown into. I didn't text them what airport I flew. So I knew that eventually I had a destination. People knew that I was missing, so they would start looking for me. And then I thought, they'll wake up around 7:00. They'll head to me by 8:00 in the morning. So they'll come to me by 9:30, 10:00. So 9:30 comes, no one's there. 10:00, nobody's there. 10:30, nobody's there. 11:00, nobody's there. And then I realize no one's coming.
Mm.
And then I realized that my strategy up to that point had been with the car. And it was like literally moment to moment to moment. Don't freak out. We're never acting from panic. We're only acting from a place of sourced power. And I looked at the clock and it was 11:11. And I said, this is a sign I need a new strategy. And I packed a bag. I made signs on the car that said, this is Eduardo Placer. This is the destination. If anything happens to me, this is the number of my mother and my sister. These are the people that I'm going to meet in Colorado. I'm at level 12 Capricorn. I Capricorn this thing like no big deal. Packed a bag with extra hats, socks, gloves, all the stuff, and then started making my way down the mountain. And about 45 minutes later, I ran into the sheriff's office and the Forestry Service, and they'd been looking for me.
Mm.
And they said, had I not moved when I moved, they wouldn't have gone up the mountain to where I was because there were no fresh tracks because the snow had covered it
because
the
the
night
snow
before.
had come. Yeah, sure.
And then when I got to, so then I was rescued. Now, because I'm also unmessable with, of course, I rented a car and went to the wedding.
That's right. Exactly.
So
What else
I
would
rented
you
the car.
do?
What else am I going to do? What else am I going to do? I rented
would
a car.
expect nothing less.
Exactly. People were like, "You're insane," and I was like, "No, I mean, I'm supposed to go to the wedding. I'm going to the wedding."
Why not?
Mention that all these people had been praying for me. They had been calling forth. They'd been navigating. I wanted to thank them personally. Like they had been instrumental in this narrative, in the way that this narrative turned out. And when I got to the mountain, I got there as the couple were saying their vows, which was beautiful. And then I shared about the decision that I made, the choice that I made at 11:11 to move. And what they told me was at 11:11, the coefficient was leading a prayer with the entire community chanting and screaming, Eduardo, come home, Eduardo, come home, Eduardo, warm your bones. And at 1:11 Eastern Standard Time, which is 11:11 Mountain Time, my sister had looked at her clock and took a snapshot, and she said, he's going to be okay. And 1:11 is my birthday. So anyway, there was just all this magic and all this wonder.
Yeah, that is magic. Abracadabra.
And Jocelyn, what I will also say is that I think because who I am is also a storyteller, in the process, I was story making and story crafting. I literally in the morning was like, well, let me write the story of what's happening. So I was literally creating with words and with language the way the story was going to unfold. And I think that skill set literally became a lifesaver.
Yeah, no, clearly you were creating and fulfilling. And what I love about what you shared is you created and then at some point you pivoted. And I think that a lot of people get stuck in their creations, like they end up like it's etched in stone instead of etched in sand or snow in your case.
Correct.
And you're able to craft a new chapter at any time. You're not stuck with anything you create in life, including being an actor and pivoting to being a coach. And the power of the pivot is lost when people get a little bit like dog with a bone and start to try and force something rather than allow for something.
And to play with that metaphor, I'm Cuban and we learn to salsa dance and merengue, and it's like you learn the technique, but then the music comes on and then you have to dance. Right? So, I love there's a beautiful line from the musical Pippin, which is, unless you're tied down to anything, you will never be free. So there is like the structure of the dance works, there is a rhythm, but now that I know the rhythm, I can dance. Otherwise it's like chaos, right?
Yes.
So I think of that, like I was able to dance in the moment, right? Like I had a plan. That plan got to a point where it no longer worked and I needed to riff, so I riffed, new plan, new strategy. And it was alchemical. It was like new strategy, new plan, go into action. Here we go.
Yeah.
And that choice in that moment
saved your life.
Saved my life. Yeah.
Yeah. Beautiful. Great story. Of course, I would expect no less from the storyteller that you are and the coach that you are. And what is something that people could do just listening to this show, walking away from listening? What could they do newly today that would either dissipate their fear of speaking or elevate their ability to storytell? Either one, or both?
Yeah. Well, I would say around the body, this is so simple. People forget to breathe. So to actually launch from a full breath is an absolute game changer. More often than not, what people do sometimes to calm themselves, and it's craziness, they do this. And then they start speaking with like the last little bit of air that they have, and then they hyperventilate themselves. So really launching from a place of power, this sense of like, I need to speak right away. This sense of urgency is like surrendering your control. So really taking the space that you need to ground yourself, to position yourself, to look at people, to be in relationship with each other, like actually launching from a place of power as opposed to a place of panic, I think sets you up powerfully. And
That's
at the
great.
core of that is your breath, right? And a big hack is most people, when they're standing at attention, they lock their knees. And in the military and in choruses, if you lock your knees and you're standing at attention, you can faint, you can pass out. So it's a way that people hyperventilate themselves. That doesn't mean squat like Groucho Marx. The Cuban homosexual did not say that. But we want to make sure that there's
that out. No,
we can edit that out. Yeah, we want to make sure that we that there's a little bit of a bend to the knee, right? There's a little bit of movement, that you're not locked in that tightness. And what I would do is I would, from a storytelling perspective, mine the moments of greatest transformation, right? What are the moments of the biggest decision points, the biggest shifts, the biggest changes? And the moment that you need to be mindful of as a storyteller is not the climax of the story, which is the turning point. But the moment that you have to be really clear about as a storyteller is what we call in storytelling the inciting incident, the spark. Like people tend to spend all this time on all this background, but they don't know that moment where the train left the station. Knowing that moment when the train leaves the station is a key moment for you to discover as a storyteller. And that moment is called the inciting incident. When you have a storyteller who's able to map that, and you're like, and now we're starting, we're like, we know we're along for the ride. And that's, I think, that's wayfaring for an audience. It's like, and you can hear it. You're like, oh, here we go.
Gotcha. Okay, I'm going to start listening for that when I listen to people tell stories. And I know you have something you want to offer our listeners, a resource for this, right?
Yeah. It's called From Story to Spotlight: How to Identify the Narrative That Makes Your Speaking Irresistible and in Demand.
I love
And
it. I'm going to have a link to that in the show notes for sure.
And what it's really about is at the intersection of one, centering your audience and what is the most important message for them to hear in this moment. Also thinking about how we as a speaker, and again, there's no such thing as private speaking, all speaking is public, how we ensure that we're building that trust with the audience. And that's the intersection of you communicating that you have the experience to be speaking on the topic, that what you have to say is logical, 2 + 2 = 4. We can piece it together. That there's this emotional connection, which is a storytelling. There's a timeliness and relevance to your message, and there's a higher purpose to your speaking. So it's at the intersection of those 5 things that you can find that narrative that's going to make the biggest difference for your ideal audience.
Beautiful.
And there's a video, there's a worksheet, so all this stuff for people to really interact with and connect with.
Amazing. Well, we'll put that in there, and anybody listening, if you even had a thought about speaking or you're already a speaker, this is a great resource to up your game or get in the game. So for sure, download that and make use of Eduardo's vast knowledge and wisdom, which is different. Knowledge and wisdom are different. But I'm so happy you spent some time with us. I really appreciate, your time always, but it's also so good to reconnect with you after all these years and see you.
And Justin, just immense gratitude. This is an amazing opportunity. You and your leadership was core to everything that I've been able to build and create. And you facilitated the advanced course that I had the privilege of participating in. So not only did you ask me the question, are you willing to be unreasonable? But there was also a defining moment in that advanced course, there were 2. One was learning how to lead from a me to a we. Like leading as a we is a very different distinction. And I remember in that workshop, in that course, there were ways that everybody was in a me conversation at the beginning.
Yes.
And then I stood up and I said, I want to own that I came here for myself. And I understand that this is not about me getting it. But the whole point of this is I show up in a way that everyone else gets what they want. And to have the courage to stand up like at the beginning of that moment and literally shift the conversation in that room, I think is a peak moment of like understanding what leadership is, not and the being of leadership, not the doing of leadership, and thinking expansively about showing up as community to lead.
And I can recall that moment actually in that course, because that is like the turning point of the advanced course, or was the turning point of the advanced course. But I would say you got a glimpse of who you really are.
Yeah.
And once you get that glimpse, you can't unsee it. So you can no longer have the focus be backwards towards yourself. It's got to go outwards towards your impact. And everything you said about the coaching that you do, about what does the audience need to hear and what do you want to leave them with, and all of it is all demonstration of that shift in focus that you are pinpointing the inciting incident.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah.
beautiful. Well, I'm so happy you're doing what you're doing. It's a real fulfillment for my
Mm.
vision of
Yeah.
fulfillment and freedom. So thank you for being someone who's in the game.
Thank you. And I love that we get to be in the game together.
Yes,
Wearing
game on.
orange. Game on.
Game
Yes.
on to anything orange, exactly. And for those of
Yes.
you listening, if you got value out of today's episode, please share it and like it and subscribe and do the things you do with podcasts. But most of all, share it with anybody you know that has a fear of public speaking, which is everybody you know, even if they haven't told you that, and anybody that you think it would make a difference for. So make sure to spread the word. All right, thanks again, and we'll see you on the next episode of Be Unmessable with the podcast.
Bye.
You don't have to be fearless to speak up. You just have to be willing. Willing to stand in your breath, willing to let go of the old story, the narrative, willing to trust that your voice is enough just as it is. Eduardo reminded us that speaking powerfully isn't about presentation or slickness. It's about presence. It's about not being perfect. It's about being present, heart open, knees soft, rooted in who you really are. And listen, if you're ready to find out just how unmessable with you really are, I've got something for you that you can try. Just take the How Unmessable With Are You quiz. It'll take you about 2 to 3 minutes, and you'll get a real-time insight into how you're showing up in the world and what are the next steps to elevate how you're showing up in the world. And if this episode moved you, don't keep it to yourself. Share it with a friend and watch the next video. My name is Jocelyn Herman-Saccio, and I'll see you in the next video.